It was my daughter Rebecca's 45th birthday, and I had arrived at her house early with the cake I'd ordered, specially from her favorite bakery. It cost $200, but for my only child, nothing was too expensive. I knocked on the door with a smile, expecting to see her face light up like it did when she was a little girl. But when she opened it, her expression was one of total annoyance. "Oh, it's you," she muttered, without even looking me in the eye. "Happy birthday, my love," I said, holding out the cake with the candles already in place. "I brought your favorite chocolate with strawberries, just like when you were a kid." Rebecca sighed deeply as if my presence were an unbearable burden. "Mom, we need to talk," she said dryly, letting me inside without even a thank you for the cake. We sat down in the living room of her beautiful home, a house that I had completely financed when she and David got married. It had been $50,000 that I'd pulled from my life savings, money I'd saved penny by penny, working double shifts as a nurse for 40 years. "You know, Mom," Rebecca began in that cold voice she had developed over the past few years, "I've been thinking a lot about my birthday, about presents, and about what would truly make me happy." I nodded enthusiastically. "Of course, my love. Tell me what you want and I'll get it for you. A trip, some jewelry, maybe that new car you mentioned." Rebecca looked me straight in the eye, and what I saw there chilled me to the bone. It was pure contempt. "The one thing I'd love most as a birthday present," she said slowly, savoring each word, "is for you to just die." The world stopped. I literally felt as if someone had ripped my heart from my chest. Her words echoed in my ears like an endless loop. My daughter, my own daughter, had wished for my death as a birthday gift. "What? What did you just say?" I managed to whisper, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "You heard me," she continued with a coldness that cut through me like knives. "I'm tired of you, Mom. Tired of your constant calls, your unexpected visits, of you always being here bothering me. My life would be so much easier and happier if you would just disappear." My hands were shaking uncontrollably. 72 years of living, 45 years of being her mother, and I never ever thought I would hear those words come out of her mouth. "Rebecca," I managed to say between sobs, "I'm your mother. I've given you everything. I've sacrificed everything for you." "Exactly," she interrupted, standing up from the sofa. "And that's why you're suffocating me. I can't breathe with your constant presence. I need freedom. I need you to let me live my life without your drama and your emotional needs." The $200 cake was still in my hands, the candles beginning to melt. Everything I had dreamed for that day, hugs, laughter, maybe a family dinner, vanished like smoke. "But honey," I tried one more time, "I just want to be close to you, to be a part of your life. You're all I have." "And that's exactly the problem," she replied, crossing her arms. "The fact that I'm all you have. Go get a life of your own and leave me alone." I got up from the sofa, my legs trembling, carrying that cake that now felt like a mockery. "I can't believe you're saying this to me," I murmured, "after everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done?" She laughed sarcastically. "Mom, everything you've done has been for your own benefit, to feel needed, to have control over my life. But I'm not a little girl anymore." I walked toward the door, feeling as if each step was costing me years of my life. As I reached the threshold, I turned one last time, hoping to see some regret in her eyes, some sign of the sweet little girl she once was. But I only saw impatience. Impatience for me to leave so she could finally celebrate her birthday without the nuisance I represented. "Happy birthday, Rebecca," I murmured. And I walked out of that house, closing the door behind me. I didn't know at that moment that it would be the last time I would ever enter that house as the mother who had sacrificed everything. Because what my daughter didn't know was that she had just awakened something in me that had been dormant for decades. I arrived at my small apartment with trembling legs and a broken heart. The $200 cake ended up in the trash. The melted candles a reflection of the tears that wouldn't stop falling. I sat on my old sofa, the same sofa where I had nursed Rebecca as a baby, where I had read her stories for years, where I had cried tears of happiness every time she called me Mom. How had I ended up here? How could my own daughter, the child I had carried in my womb for 9 months, wish for my death with such coldness? I began to remember everything, absolutely everything I had done for her over the past 45 years. When she was 3 and got pneumonia, I worked triple shifts at the hospital to pay for her medicine. It was $2,200 in antibiotics that my insurance didn't cover. Money I got from selling my late mother's jewelry. When she turned 16 and wanted to go to the prom, I worked entire weekends for 4 months to buy her that pink dress that cost $800. I remember how her eyes sparkled when she tried it on. "Thank you, Mom. You're the best in the world," she had said, hugging me tight. In college, when she changed her major for the 3rd time, I paid for every semester without a single complaint. Net $42,000 in total. Money I got by taking out a second mortgage on my house. "Don't worry, honey," I would tell her every time she called me crying. "Your education is the most important thing." When she married David, I organized and paid for the entire wedding, $35,000, so she could have the wedding of her dreams. The most elegant ballroom in the city, the most beautiful flowers, the menu she chose without worrying about the price. "I want my princess to have everything," I told her as I signed check after check. And then came the house. That very house where she had just humiliated me. When Rebecca and David decided they wanted to buy their first property, I didn't hesitate for a second. "Don't worry about the down payment," I told them. "I'll take care of it." It was $150,000 from my life savings, the money I had been saving for my retirement. But it didn't end there. When the twins arrived 5 years ago, I became the free babysitter. Every night Rebecca wanted to go out with David. Every time they had plans and needed someone to watch the kids, there I was, not charging a single cent, happy to help my daughter have the life she had always dreamed of. When David lost his job last year, who paid the mortgage for 8 months? Me. $16,000 that I took from my pension. Money that meant eating rice and beans for weeks just to stretch my income. And when the twins needed braces, another $4,000 that I covered without a second thought. "Don't worry," I told them, seeing their distressed faces. "That's what grandparents are for." I got up from the sofa and went to my desk where I kept all the receipts, all the proof of every single penny I had spent on my daughter and her family. They were boxes and boxes of documents that I had kept, not because of mistrust, but because it made me proud to remember everything I had been able to do for them. I started doing the math, raising Rebecca from birth until she was on her own, approximately $200,000. College, $42,000. The wedding, $35,000. The down payment on the house, $150,000. The mortgage payments when David was unemployed, $16,000. The twins' braces, $4,000. The birthday and Christmas gifts over all those years, at least $10,000 more. The total was devastating, over $460,000, almost $500,000 that I had invested in my daughter's happiness, and all of it to hear that her greatest desire was for me to die. Tears fell onto the papers as I added and subtracted. If I had put that money in a savings account with compound interest, today I would have more than $600,000. I could be living in a nice house, traveling the world, enjoying a comfortable retirement instead of counting pennies in this tiny apartment. But no, I had chosen to invest in love. I had chosen to believe that the money spent on my daughter was money well spent, that every sacrifice was worth it, because in the end, I would have a daughter who loved me and would take care of me in my old age. How foolish I had been. I picked up the phone and dialed Rebecca's number. I needed to hear her voice one more time. I needed to confirm that she had really said those terrible words. "What do you want now, Mom?" she answered with annoyance after the 5th ring. "Rebecca, I need to know if you really meant what you said to me today," I asked in a trembling voice. "Of course I meant it," she replied without a hint of remorse. "Mom, it's time for you to understand that I need space. Your obsession with me isn't healthy." "Obsession?" I repeated, incredulous. You call a mother's love obsession. Yes, exactly that. And I hope that after today you finally get the message. I need you to respect my boundaries and let me live my life. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. There was no misunderstanding. My daughter truly believed that my love was a burden, that my presence in her life was a problem she needed to solve. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, remembering every beautiful moment we had shared, every hug, every "I love you, Mom" that had come from her lips. Had it all been a lie, or had I simply raised a daughter who had become so selfish that she couldn't see beyond her own needs? At 3 o'clock in the morning, something changed inside of me. The sadness began to transform into something different, into anger, into indignation, into the clear understanding that I had been used, manipulated, and discarded like a used tissue. My daughter wanted me to die. Well, maybe it was time to give her exactly what she asked for. The next day, I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The sadness had given way to something more powerful: determination. If my daughter wanted me to disappear from her life, I would, but not in the way she expected. I put on my best clothes and went out with a defined purpose. First stop, the bank where I had a joint account with Rebecca for her house's emergency expenses. That account I had opened just in case, and in which I had deposited $20,000 for any unforeseen events that might arise. "Good morning, Mrs. Johnson," greeted the manager, Mr. Martinez, who had known me for years. "How can I help you today? I want to close joint account number 458728891, I said, with a smile that he interpreted as kindness, but which was in reality pure vengeance. "Are you sure? That account has a considerable balance, Aries." $20,000, he warned, checking his computer screen. "Completely sure. I want to transfer all of that money to my personal account," I replied, signing the papers with a steady hand. Seeing those $20,000 return to my personal account gave me a satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. It was only the beginning. Next stop, the mortgage loan office. During the past year, when David was unemployed, I had co-signed their mortgage. That meant that if they couldn't pay, the responsibility fell on me. But it also meant that I had rights to that property. "Mrs. Johnson," the loan officer, Ms. Williams, greeted me. "What brings you here? I want to review the mortgage contract where I appear as a co-signer," I explained. "I need to understand exactly what my rights and obligations are." While she looked for the documents, I remembered the day I signed those papers. Rebecca had cried with emotion. "Thank you, Mom. I don't know what we'd do without you. You're our savior," she had said, hugging me tight. David had also thanked me, promising me they would never have late payments. "Here are the documents," Ms. Williams said, placing a thick folder in front of me. "As a co-signer, you are responsible for the payments if the primary holders cannot make them, but you also have the right to reclaim the property if you believe the debtors won't be able to fulfill their obligations." "Exactly," I completed, examining the papers carefully. "Is there a problem with the payments?" she asked with professional concern. "I'm evaluating the situation," I replied, putting a copy of all the documents in my bag. "What would I have to do if I decided to exercise my rights as co-signer?" "You would have to demonstrate that there's a risk of default, or that there have already been significant delays. In your case, I see that you covered 8 months of payments last year, which is already sufficient evidence that the primary holders lack financial stability." Perfect. David had lost his job again last week. Information that Rebecca had given me without thinking about the implicated ons. She thought she was asking for help indirectly, but what she was really giving me were the weapons for my revenge. I left that office with a smile. My dear daughter had no idea of the storm that was brewing. Third stop, my personal lawyer, Mr. Anel Adams, a 70-year-old man who had been a friend of my late husband's. He knew my entire family situation and had witnessed my sacrifices for Rebecca for decades. "Julieta," he greeted me warmly. "What brings you to my office? It's not common to see you here. Anel, I need your help with something very important, I told him, sitting in front of his desk. I want to completely change my will. His eyebrows shot up in surprise. Has something happened with Rebecca? I told him everything, every hurtful word, every moment of contempt, the coldness with which she had wished for my death on her own birthday. Anel listened to me in silence, his expression becoming more serious with each detail. Julieta, he said finally, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. I never thought Rebecca was capable of something like that after everything you've done for her. Me neither, I sighed. But I've made my decision. I want to change my will and leave everything to a charitable organization. I also want to set up a trust fund for my grandchildren, but Rebecca can't have access to that money until they turn 25. That can be done. Anel nodded, taking notes. Do you also want to change the beneficiaries of your life insurance? Of course, anything with Rebecca's name on it, I want to change it. My daughter wants me to die, but when I do, she's not going to receive a single penny from me. We spent 2 hours reviewing all my legal documents, my $100,000 life insurance policy, my savings, my apartment, my investments. Everything that had once been designated for Rebecca would now go to the Orphans Foundation, where I had worked as a volunteer for years. There's something else, I said when we were finishing. I want you to prepare all the documents to reclaim the house where Rebecca lives. As the co-signer of the mortgage, I have rights, and her husband just lost his job again. Anel's eyes lit up with understanding. Now I see where you're going with all of this. Are you sure you want to go that far? Completely sure, I replied with a determination that surprised even myself. My daughter told me her life would be easier if I disappeared. Well, I'm going to disappear, but first, I'm going to make sure she understands exactly what it means to live without me and without everything I've done for her. When I left Anel's office, it was already dark. I walked through the streets of my neighborhood feeling renewed, as if I had woken up from a very long dream. For 45 years, I had lived for Rebecca. I had sacrificed my own dreams and desires to give her everything she wanted, but no more. I got back to my apartment and poured myself a glass of wine, something I hadn't done in years. Toasting myself was something completely new, but it felt incredibly liberating. I took out my phone and dialed a number I had saved months ago, but had never dared to use. It was for a travel agency specializing in retirees that offered packages for living abroad. Good evening. This is Julieta Johnson, I said when they answered. I saw about China. Your promotion about living in Switzerland. Could you send me complete information? Of course, Mrs. Johnson. Switzerland is a very popular destination among our clients. We have several programs from temporary stays to permanent residency. What kind of information do you need? Everything, I replied without hesitation. I want to know everything about how a 72-year-old person can start a new life in Switzerland. After hanging up, I stood at the window looking out at the city where I had lived my entire life. Soon, all of this would be just a memory. My daughter had asked for my disappearance as a birthday gift, and I was going to grant it to her in the most spectacular way possible. What Rebecca didn't know was that her wish was about to become her worst nightmare. The next few days were a roller coaster of emotions and secret preparations. Every morning I woke up with a mix of pain and determination that pushed me forward with my plan. It was as if I had woken from a long slumber where I had lived only to please my daughter, and now finally I was living for myself. On Wednesday morning, my phone rang. It was Rebecca. For a moment, my heart sped up, thinking that maybe she had reconsidered, that she might apologize for the terrible words she had said. How naive I still was. "Mom," she said in that cold voice she had adopted lately, "I need you to do me a favor." Not even a hello, or how are you? She went straight to the point, as if I were her personal assistant. "What do you need?" I asked, curious to see how far her audacity would go. "The twins have a presentation at school on Friday, and David and I have an important work dinner." Could you watch them that night? The irony was delicious. The same woman who had wished for my death as a birthday gift was now asking me to watch her children as if nothing had happened, as if I were a resource available to 24/7. I can't, I replied simply. What do you mean you can't? She asked with genuine surprise. Evidently, she wasn't used to me saying no. I have other plans, I lied with a smile she couldn't see. What plans could you possibly have? She asked with that condescending tone that hurt me deeply. As if at 72 years old, I didn't have the right to have a life of my own. Plans that are none of your business, I replied, keeping my calm. Find another sitter. But, Mom, I can't get a sitter on such short notice. Besides, since when do you charge me to watch your own grandchildren? There it was, the emotional manipulation she had used on me for years. But this time it wouldn't work. Since you told me that your greatest gift would be for me to die, I answered with coldness. If you want me to disappear from your life, I'm starting now. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Rebecca let out a sarcastic laugh. Seriously, you're going to punish me like you're a little brat, she said. I thought after a few days the drama would be over. It's not drama, Rebecca. It's respect for your wish. You wanted me to disappear, so that's what I'll do. Fine, she said with annoyance. If you want to be that childish, that's on you. But don't come crying later when you're lonely. She hung up without saying goodbye. Perfect. Every interaction confirmed that I was making the right decision. That afternoon, I went to the bank again, this time to do something I never thought I would. Withdraw most of my savings in cash. It was $30,000 that I put in an envelope and stored in my personal safe, the money I would need for my new life in Switzerland. I also called the travel agency and confirmed my trip. A flight to Zurich for next Tuesday, with the option to extend my stay indefinitely. The initial cost was $5,000. Money I paid without blinking an eye. It was the most expensive and most intelligent investment I had made in years. On Thursday morning, I received an unexpected visit. It was my neighbor, Elvira, a 68-year-old woman who lived in the apartment next door and with whom I had developed a friendship over the past 5 years. Giulietta, she said, sitting in my living room with a cup of coffee. You look different these days. Has something happened? Elvira had been a silent witness to all my sacrifices for Rebecca. She had seen me cancel plans with her to rush over whenever my daughter needed me. She had seen the bags of expensive food I would buy to take to Rebecca while I ate canned soup to save money. I told her everything, every painful detail of what had happened on Rebecca's birthday, and also all the plans I had been making during the week. My God, Giulietta, Elvira murmured, her eyes filled with tears. I can't believe Rebecca would say something so cruel to you after everything you've done for her. The worst part is that she said it as if it were the most normal thing in the world, I explained, as if I were a nuisance in her life that needed to be eliminated. And you're really going to Switzerland? Yes, I replied firmly. I've already bought the ticket. I'm leaving on Tuesday. Elvira took my hands kindly. You know you have my full support, right? What Rebecca did to you is unforgivable. There's something else, I said, lowering my voice. I'm going to need your help with something very important. I explained my complete plan, how I wanted Rebecca to believe I had truly died, at least for a while. Elvira would be my accomplice, the person who would find my empty apartment and my farewell letter. It's brilliant, Elvira murmured with a mischievous smile. That ungrateful child is finally going to understand what it means to lose you. Will you help me? Of course I will. In fact, I think it's exactly what Rebecca needs to wake up. That night, I worked on the most important letter of my life, the letter that Rebecca would find on her table and that would change everything forever. I wrote and rewrote every word, making sure it conveyed exactly what I wanted to say. My dear Rebecca, the letter began. You asked me as a birthday gift to disappear from your life, and I have decided to grant your wish. When you read this letter, I will already be far from here, starting the life I should have lived years ago, instead of sacrificing it all for you. I continued writing for hours, documenting every penny I had spent on her, every sacrifice I had made, every opportunity I had missed by always being available for her needs. But it wasn't a bitter letter. It was an educational letter. I wanted her to understand exactly what she had lost. Along with this letter, you will find all the legal documents I have signed this week, I continued writing. The change of will, the cancellation of your health insurance that I paid for, the notification that as the co-signer of your mortgage, I have decided to exercise my rights due to David's job instability, and the cancellation of all financial benefits you received from me. It was a 23-page letter that meticulously detailed everything that was going to change in her life now that I had disappeared, just as she wanted. Your life, Rashan, it'll be much easier without me, the letter ended. But it will also be much more expensive. I hope it's worth it. On Friday night, as I was packing my most important belongings into 2 suitcases, I received a call from Rebecca. I didn't answer. She called 3 more times, but I simply let the phone ring. I had nothing left to say to her. The next day, Saturday, David appeared at my door. He looked exhausted and desperate. "Julieta," he said in a pleading voice, "Rebecca told me what happened between you two. I know what she said was wrong, but please don't do this to our family." "Do what?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Stop helping us. Just withdrawing from our lives like this. The kids need you. We need you." How interesting. When Rebecca wanted to get rid of me, I was a nuisance. But when they realized everything I did for them, suddenly they needed me. "David," I said calmly, "your wife was very clear with me. My presence in her life is a burden she no longer wants to bear. I'm just respecting her wishes. But Julieta, you know how Rebecca is when she gets mad. She didn't mean it." "Oh, she didn't?" "Because she sounded pretty convincing when she wished for my death as a birthday gift." David lowered his head. He knew he had no argument to defend the indefensible. "Julieta, I'm here to tell you that Rebecca didn't mean it. I know her. She's been under a lot of pressure." I looked at him, at his tired face, at his desperate eyes, and I felt a brief moment of pity. Pity for him, for my grandchildren, but not for Rebecca. My heart had hardened toward her. "David, tell me something. If your daughter had said something like that to your mother, would you have accepted it? Would you have made excuses for her?" He didn't answer. He simply lowered his head even more. "This isn't about you, David. It's about me and my daughter. It's about a mother who gave everything, and a daughter who asked for her death." "I'm sorry, Julieta, but I'm not leaving until you reconsider." He sat down on the floor by my door, a clear sign of a hunger strike. "Suit yourself," I said, and I closed the door in his face. That night I had a glass of wine and called a friend from my volunteer work at the Orphans Foundation. I told her about my travel plans and she said, "Julieta, that's wonderful. You deserve a new life." She was so happy for me that her happiness filled me with more strength to move on with my plan. The next day, Sunday, my phone rang non-stop. Rebecca called, David called, my brother called, even my 2 best friends called. But I didn't answer any of them. They all had a message. "Julieta, call us back. Please, we need to talk. This is crazy." But I knew what they really wanted. They wanted to manipulate me into going back to being the old Julieta, the one who sacrificed everything, the one who endured everything for the sake of family love, the one who was always there to solve their problems, the one who had become a bank, a babysitter, and a therapist, all for free, the one they would now finally lose. And they couldn't stand it. Monday was my last full day in the city I had called home my entire life. I went to the bank one last time and withdrew another $5,000 to have extra cash for my trip. Then I went to the Orphans Foundation and made a final donation, a $10,000 check from the money I had recovered from the joint account with Rebecca. The director hugged me. "Thank you, Julieta. This donation will change the lives of many children." I smiled. This was my new life, helping those who truly needed it, instead of those who had only used me. That night I called my lawyer, Anil, on last time. "Anil, the plans are still a go. As soon as I'm in Switzerland, I want you to send the documents to Rebecca, every single one of them." "Are you sure about this, Julieta?" he asked. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The next day, Tuesday, I left for the airport very early. I left the house key with my neighbor Elvira as we had planned. On the table, I left the letter for Rebecca, a letter that would change her life forever. In it, I had meticulously detailed every single cent, every sacrifice, every moment of my life that I had given to her. And at the end, I had simply added, "Your wish has been granted, Rebecca. You are finally free of me. I am a nuisance no more. You can finally have the life you've always wanted. You will never have to worry about me again. And now you'll have to worry about your mortgage, your health insurance, and every other financial problem that I was always there to solve. Farewell, my love." I arrived in Zurich feeling renewed, as if I had shed a heavy cloak I had worn for 45 years. I got a small apartment with a view of the mountains and began to explore my new city. The first few weeks were a roller coaster of emotions, a mixture of sadness for the past and hope for the future. I missed my grandchildren, and I cried a lot, but I never once regretted my decision, because for the first time in my life, I was living for myself. 3 months after my arrival in Switzerland, I received a call from Anil, my lawyer. "Giulietta, Rebecca wants to talk to you. She's been calling me non-stop." "Did she receive the letter and the documents?" I asked. "Yes, she did. She's in a state of shock. David lost his job permanently, and the bank is threatening to foreclose on their house. She's also discovered that her health insurance was canceled and that all her credit cards have been maxed out." I didn't say anything. I simply listened. "Giulietta, she's very sorry. She says she wants to apologize to you and that she'll do anything to get you to come back." "Tell her I'm sorry, Anil. But the Giulietta she knew is dead. Tell her she got her birthday wish. And tell her I'm not coming back. Ever." Anil tried to convince me to talk to her. "Giulietta, she's your daughter." "Anil, I had to choose between my daughter and my own life. I chose my life." And I hung up the phone. The silence was so much more peaceful than her constant drama. The next morning, I went for a walk in the mountains and began to write. I wrote about my life, about my sacrifices, about my broken heart, and about my new life. My book was called The $200 Cake. It became a bestseller in Europe and then in the United States. I traveled, I gave interviews, I spoke at conferences, and I used my story to help other women who were suffering in silence like I had for so many years. I finally found my purpose, my passion, my own life. I'm now 75 years old, sitting on my balcony in Switzerland, looking at the mountains as I write the last lines of my story. I am 75 years old with assets of more than $600,000, a bestseller book, dear friends from all over the world, and an inner peace I never thought I would experience again. Rebecca asked me as a birthday gift to disappear from her life. I granted her that wish in the most spectacular way possible, and what she never calculated was that by losing me, she not only lost a mother who loved her unconditionally, but she also lost the person who had kept her financial world stable for decades. My disappearance was my gift to her. My new life was my gift to me. And it was worth every tear, every sacrifice, and every moment of pain that brought me here. Because sometimes the only way to save yourself is to have the courage to lose yourself completely in order to be reborn as the person you were always meant to be. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story.